The second major challenge that I raise in the book relates to the dynamics that surround Israel in American politics today. I believe that those dynamics fundamentally skew American policy in the Middle East, and they prevent the United States from playing an effective role in helping to resolve the conflict. I do not believe in the mantra that you just need to get Israelis and Palestinians into a room together to talk to each other. I don't think if you put the two sides in a room alone together that they would be able to resolve their differences at a negotiating table. We've tried this for 20 years, and we see the results. This conflict is like a bad marriage, and the couple needs a divorce, and they'd simply have to come to terms on how to separate. You don't lock the angry husband and the angry wife in a room and ask them to divide up their assets or work out the whole issue of child custody on their own. You bring in a mediator who lays out a reasonable compromise, a reasonable resolution, and does what it takes to get the parties to an agreement. And that's what's needed here. And the United States could play such a valuable role in such an effort. In fact, it's in Israel's existential interest, as I laid out earlier. If it's going to be both Jewish and democratic, it is in Israel's existential interest for the United States to step in and to help to play that role. Yet, I argue the United States isn't able to play that role because of the political dynamics that surround this issue today in American politics. I call it the rule book of American politics. American politicians and policymakers have been taught over decades that they have no choice but to advocate Israel right or wrong policies that are even at times more hardline and more right-wing than the government of Israel if they hope to get Jewish American political support. And that's because for years, American politicians have been hearing only one voice from the American Jewish community when it comes to Israel, rather than the diversity of opinions that actually exists. Polling consistently shows that only 7 to 10% of Jewish Americans actually make their electoral decisions based on Israel. And that group is loud, it is passionate, and it has succeeded in creating an extraordinarily effective lobby that presents itself to American politicians not as a voice on Israel, but as the voice on Israel. In my book, I refer to this group by the term that my good friend and my pollster Jim Gerstein uses, which is the loudest 8%. The loudest 8% doesn't speak for me, and they don't speak for all American Jews. Jewish Americans are not a single-issue constituency, and we are not uniformly hawkish when it comes to Israel. We do care deeply. We need to know that our politicians care deeply. We want to know that the U.S.-Israel relationship will be maintained, that the security of Israel will be protected. But we, as a community, as a general matter, we Jewish Americans, we understand that real security comes not simply through military superiority, but through a combination of both a peace agreement and a qualitative military edge. Majorities of American Jews recognize that a two-state solution is in Israel's interest. They recognize that the settlement enterprise is hurting Israel's long-term security and its chances for peace. And they want the United States to play an active role in helping to resolve the conflict. None of those facts about American Jewish public opinion are understood clearly in Washington, D.C. The rule book of American politics tells otherwise, and we need to change that rule book. So I spend a fair amount of time in the book on the need to rewrite the rules of American politics so that American policymakers can have the space to pursue the policies that are both in Israel's interests and in American long-term national security interest without having to fear the political ramifications. The third and the final challenge that I raise in the book is the need to rewrite the rules that surround the conversation about Israel in the American Jewish community itself. It continues to astound me that a group of people that is so known and so defined by its penchant for debate. You know, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Try figuring out what bagels to order at your brunch with a group of Jews in the room. Yet we act at times as if the whole community in this country, all 6 million of us, should only be permitted to have one view when it comes to Israel. So I spend a great deal of time on this particular point in the book, recounting the many instances in which those who hold what have been the dominant views in the Jewish community have tried to shut down the voices of dissent rather than to debate them on the substance of the points that they're making. And I explore in the book what I see as a very interesting parallel to my father's work in the 1930s. In the 1930s, my father, representing the right wing in Israel, came to this country and wanted to sound the alarm about the impending doom in Europe of the Jewish community there and the need to do something about it. But my father and his group, which is finally getting some publicity these days, a group called the Bergson Group, led by a man named Peter Bergson, they were shut out of synagogues, out of the Jewish communal debate. They were called fascists. They were called self-hating Jews. They were attacked not because what they were saying was wrong, but because of the political views that they held. And the American Jewish community and the American Jewish establishment kept them out of the debate. Their efforts were met with a campaign of vilification that shut their voices out of the Jewish debate in this country. And the tactics used then are very, very similar to the tactics being used today, closing the doors of communal institutions to dissent, engaging in campaigns of name-calling and smears, and using funding as a leverage to shut down opportunities for people to speak. Government agencies then were even enlisted. Informants were planted in their office. My father was even drafted into the U.S. Army as a result of a campaign by those who opposed him politically. That hasn't happened to me yet. They don't want me, really, in the Army. Today, though, much of the pressure that is exerted on Jewish institutions to keep J Street and others with similar views out of synagogues and Hillels and other communal institutions comes from a small cadre of people, but this time they're those on the right. The right-wing activists and donors are doing the shutting down of the debate. The political polls may be reversed, but the overall goal is the same. It's to shut down the debate rather than to engage in it. So my third call for change in the book is to change the rules governing the conversation on Israel in the Jewish community. Let's not spend so much time trying to define who is in and out of the pro-Israel tent. Let's focus on the fact that the tent is burning down, and we need to work together to help save it. In the end, I wrote the book not to tell my personal story and not simply to lay out challenges and problems and give you some analyses. I wrote it in the hopes of inspiring those who want nothing but the best for Israel to sound the alarm and to spring into action. I am so deeply afraid that we are on a path to a tragic ending to a magical story. That magical story that is the state of Israel. It began over 130 years ago with the rebirth of a nation after thousands of years. It began when my great-grandparents set foot once again in Jaffa in 1882. As the subtitle of the book indicates, I believe we are fighting for the survival of the Jewish nation. And I think that those who care deeply about Israel, who have done so much over the years to help build it, have to step to the plate now to help change the course of the country and of our community before it's too late.